All right, good evening. It's now just after 7 PM on Tuesday, March 7. This is the Select Board's meeting. We started the meeting at 6:45 in an executive session dealing with a contractual matter, and we're going to now enter into open session. If I can invite all those who are present in the room with us to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have a couple of posted hearings. The first one is at 7:10. So in order to give interested parties an opportunity to be here for that discussion, I'm going to hold off on that until about 7:10. It's just after 7 now. So I'm going to move to new business, if that's acceptable to my peers, and I will ask the town manager if he wants to speak to the annual town election warrant item on the agenda.
So this provision is just, sorry. So this is something the board approves every year prior to the election. It's just the election warrant for the local annual election.
All right, and that is going to be on, let's see,
April 1st.
you got it, okay. All right, any questions from my colleagues?
Motion to approve the annual town election warrant for April 1st, 2023.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
We have a second. So for the recording secretary's benefit, a motion is made by Mr. Kelly, seconded by Mr. Mackey. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair will make that unanimous, so that's 5-0.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Ms. Moore?
point of information.
Yes.
Just as a note, this also is the warrant to call for annual town meeting on Monday, May 1st at 7:30 at the high school.
This is the traditional warrant.
Yes, just so it's captured in the minutes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. As a former moderator, I should appreciate that. All right, Mr. Montori, do you want to speak to the union donations to the police department?
There were some donations made by the union for the purchase of refrigerator in the police department, and in order for us to take the money and pay for it, it needs to be properly accepted by the board.
Okay. Is there a value that we need to accept, or just the donation in general?
I would say the donation in general. There were two different checks.
Any questions from my colleagues?
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to accept the donation, union donation to the Tewksbury Police Department.
Second.
All right, so motion is being offered by Mr. Mackey, seconded by Ms. Wellman. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That will be unanimous as well, and express our appreciation to the union for their generosity. If I may ask my colleagues' indulgence, we'll move deeper into the agenda, and we'll deal with town council invoice, if that's okay.
Sure.
Perfect. Mr. Chairman, there are two town council invoices, one in the amount of $3,187.50 from January 16th through January 31st. I would recommend approval.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, the motion was offered by Mr. Kelly, seconded by Ms. Wellman. All those in favor of the invoice payment for the period of January 16th through January 31, 2023, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That would be unanimous.
Second invoice is in the amount of $3,697.50 for the period of February 1st through February 15th. I'd recommend approval.
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion is offered by Ms. Wellman, seconded by Mr. Kelly. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous as well. That's going to bring us to minutes. Mr. Kratman, you mind?
We have minutes, that the board has a chance to review for December 20th, 2022, and for February 8th, 2023, and I make the motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, so motion is offered by Mr. Kratman, seconded by Ms. Wellman. Again, those minutes are December 20, 2022, and February 8, 2023. All those in favor of approving them, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's going to be unanimous as well. Okay, let me ask Mr. Kelly, do you have any board reports this evening?
I do not, thank you.
Okay, how about you, Ms. Wellman?
I have one brief one at the request of Alex Louder to inform the board and invite the board and all elected members of the community and the entire community to attend an affordable housing production conversation that's being put on with NIMCOG via Microsoft Teams, so it's a call. You don't have to go anywhere in person. And it's at 5:30 p.m. Thursday, March 16th. Because we have such an affordable housing crisis in our community, we're producing this affordable housing production plan with NIMCOG. I think it's a great opportunity to have your input there. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mackey?
Nothing to report, Mr. Chairman.
No.
Thank you.
Mr. Kratman? None of you are helping me out.
I got at least a minute for you. We had a meeting recently with the LRTA. We went through our budgeting for what we're planning for the year. We're trying to roll out more electric vehicles and things through the community. And one of the things that we're able to accomplish, which is in effect right now, is that we were able to add additional trips along 38. So what we did is we rerouted the bus that usually would continue as it would go down Livingston Street, take a left on East Street, and then come all the way up by Town Hall. Well, the bus now takes a left at Chandler Street and will travel past the Tewksbury Library. So it'll take a left at the senior center, pretty much where that is. Takes a left up Chandler, goes up to the senior center, and then takes a right onto Route 38. So it grabs a lot more of Route 38, and it has the ability of people that want to get to the library to take public transportation, which I talked to Robert Hayes and a number of people there. They was greatly appreciated that we made that available. It also gives the opportunity for people that are working at the Tewksbury State Hospital to go one way or the other, either get the bus on Livingston Street or come the other way and come down to Chandler and grab it that way. I'm going to be working with Kevin Hardeman and the town manager to, once we get to spring, to take a look at upgrading some handicapped accessibility so that people getting off the bus can get to the library and to some crossings, and we'll work with the LRTA to come up with the appropriate additional bus stops for that area. Right now, it's a flagging system. They just promoted it, they just put it out, and so if somebody wants the bus, they're standing out there, they just wave, they stop, they pick them up. But we'll look at that other additional corridor of Route 38, and we'll pick up the residents as it goes along. It'll be helpful for the kids getting off of school who want to go to jobs going up 38. They can get on there and, give them a little bit of public transportation. But that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. And I just wanted to ask the town manager if he would just give us a brief update. I understand that we rolled out a new permitting system in the last few days, and it seems to me that that's going to be a big step forward in terms of process and accessibility. So I wondered if you could just recap that for residents who may not have
Sure.
been aware of that.
Just give me a second. So on Monday, we rolled out our new online permitting with OpenGov. We have switched over from our previous system with PeopleGIS, and through the efforts over the last year by the assistant town manager and all the department heads, OpenGov is going to offer more opportunities to apply online and to pay online. So for residents, starting this past Monday at 8:30 a.m., there are online applications and online payments for most permits in the town, building permits, health permits, DPW that weren't available before. We still need to work on other licensing and permits that are through the manager's office and the selectman's office, but that's the next phase. We'll be able to do department sign-offs online, whereas before we have to send green sheets around for those type of sign-offs, so that'll be much easier. There'll be better communication for the staff throughout the process. We can check on the status of a permit 24/7 from a resident standpoint, so if you want to know what the status is. And it's going to allow departments just more access of information for themselves when they need it, instead of waiting for the documents to be sent to them. And it's just going to be easier and just more efficient for residents. We set up kiosks within the town hall and the building department, so you can go downstairs at the counter and input the information. We already have that at the DPW. So it's just going to speed things up and provide more instant time for department heads and residents. And again, residents have been looking to be able to do this online instead of having to come in, fill out paper, and provide the payments by check or cash.
So is the point of entry through the town's website?
It's through the town's website. All the information is on the front of the website. You can go on to any of the permits that we have, and it will take you from there.
Terrific. Excellent. And you had a few people involved with developing,
So that,
laying this out?
yeah, the assistant town manager, Steve Savick, spearheaded the changeover. All the department heads were involved, from the building commissioner, the director of health, community development, the DPW director, and town engineer. They all worked collaboratively to bring it forward.
Terrific. We've talked about that for quite some time. So
We have, and the previous system we used didn't have all of these features. OpenGov is used in many towns throughout the Commonwealth. And what we like about it the most is we can grow with it and build upon it, which we intend to do for our liquor licenses and all the board licenses.
is OpenGov the platform on which the town website is based?
No, the town website is with
Civic Plus.
City
So they-
Plus.
These two are linked, or?
Yep, they work together.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Appreciate the good work on that. All right, I managed to get us to 7:15.
Well
So,
done. Artfully, sir.
Thankfully. So I'm going to move back up to the second item on our meeting agenda, which is the 7:10 public hearing for an entertainment license as requested by La Vida Dolce LLC. I will read the hearing notice. That notice is hereby given that the Select Board will conduct a public hearing in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 138, on Tuesday, March 7, 2023, at 7:10 PM in the Select Board's main hall at the Town Hall, on the application by Todd Arsenault of La Vida Dolce LLC, located at 1866 Main Street, for an entertainment license consisting of live music, acoustic and recorded music, DJ with amplifier, and televised programming. The hours for entertainment in the outdoor patio would be from 12 PM to 9 PM, and indoor from 6 AM to 12 AM, from Sunday through Saturday. And as is always the case with our public hearings, input is welcome from the public. We certainly recommend comments be provided in advance in writing before today's hearing, or last Friday, March 3rd. The notice was properly filed, and we have quite an extensive abutter list, so all of those abutters were notified, presumably, of this hearing. So let me invite representatives, I don't know if Mr. Arsenault's here, but whoever is here from La Vida Dolce to come forward. And if you would just, I know who you are now, but if you would speak into that microphone microphone and introduce yourself. And
Yes, Todd Arsenal, it's La Vida Dolce.
Thank you.
Rebecca Arsenal, La Vida Dolce.
Welcome. Thank you. All right, so this is an entertainment license request, and those are widely varied in terms of the different aspects of entertainment that can be requested. The hours are certainly something that we consider, the venue, indoors, outdoors. It's a public hearing, so we'll listen to what you have to describe about what you're looking for. And then we'll invite anyone else from the public who might have some comment about it, question, concern, whatever that might be. The board may have questions, and then we'll figure out what the best course is. Okay, so maybe you can just tell us a little bit about what you're trying to seek approval on.
So I'm asking the board and the townspeople if just a day of entertainment fun, have just a band, Italian music for the day, and small, probably do some prizes, some free giveaways, and just to introduce our business into the public. And, there'll be plenty of children there. It's nothing that's going to be late over the night. I might have misinterpreted the hours you said, but it's nothing that's going to be through the hours, because honestly, this bakery has me working night and day, and that's all I need to go to bed early. But again, it's just pretty much a grand opening style, just bringing basic North End stuff to Tewksbury for the
So
day.
is it just one day you're looking for?
Yes.
Or on a consistent, regular basis?
Well, the music
But
is my speaker system, I don't know, but that's
Yeah.
indoors and some outdoors, but not a band. I'm not looking for a band nightly.
I think the application kind of involves both of what we're going to
Yeah,
do in the
that's why I'm
forecast of the
asking.
business, and then also to include what we have planned for our grand opening. So for our grand opening, we have, it's not going to be marching through the parking lot, but the North End Marching Band. It's from the North End. They're a very old band, and it's just a few hours. Older band, just a few hours of that during the day. It'll be family throughout the day. The bakery pretty early, so we've been open a total of 3 days now in the bakery because everything is fresh. We close early when everything is done for the day. We don't have frozen products for the most part, so when everything is gone, we close. So the bakery doesn't stay open very late anyways. And we have an indoor radio, which typically has things like Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra. So I don't think it's offensive music to anybody. I think it's a overall acceptable type of music. I know everybody has different tastes and stuff, but
Easy listening through the day while you can pick out.
yeah, like a light background music.
Yeah.
Nothing loud, nothing crazy.
Okay. So do you have a date for the grand opening?
Yes, March 25th.
March 25?
Yes,
Okay. What day of the week is that?
Saturday.
Thank you. All right, so for that one day, let's take this in pieces. In that one day, you have a band, they're gonna be outside or inside, or both?
It depended on the weather. So I'd like for them to be outside or outside dining, and, but if must do,
Okay.
If the weather's cooperating, yeah.
Yeah,
so it was
If the weather's cooperating.
exactly, which New England, we never know.
okay. I don't know that with a band, do you need amplifiers or anything like that outside?
No, it's.
It's mostly like accordion music. It's not really
Yeah.
anything.
Okay, all right.
This indoor radio system, which we will have throughout the year, and I know that the
It's
permit
not
gets
ever
renewed.
playing outside like on a constant.
Yeah, I think the acoustic is like what involved the indoor radio. I think that's the part. So the indoor
Acoustic
radio
radio,
is just
right.
the ceiling radio throughout the
Yeah.
bakery. It's just light background
So will
music.
you have music outside on a regular basis? Forget outside of the band, but,
Yes, we'd like to
Yes.
have music outside on a regular basis.
okay. And is it live music or?
No.
Or like the radio you're talking about?
Radio.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Wellman?
through you, will that radio just be, it's part of your existing indoor amplification system and it's just sort of piped outside?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So you mentioned things like live music and a DJ, things like that. Is that not what you're asking for?
There'll be no DJ.
Yeah.
We're not doing the house party, we're just, the DJ will not be in the house.
Okay, all right.
But just basically, we followed those guidelines for something like that, if anything. We'd like to do a ribbon cutting ceremony, and, you know, it's been such a long ride that feels like mountains been lifted off my shoulders.
Sure. Okay. Will you have, or do you have television inside?
Yes.
You do, okay. All right, so,
Which is currently taken up by,
Boar's Head,
no, Pacino and
Frank Sinatra.
Frank Sinatra, photoshopped into sitting in the bakery.
there you go. Okay. All right, so let me confirm, the hearing notice talked about some hours, so I want to make sure that my colleagues and I understand completely what you're looking for hours. Let me get back to that. So the outdoor patio, you're looking to have the ability to have entertainment from noon to 9 PM. Is that accurate?
Yeah, correct, yes.
All right, and then indoors, 6 AM to midnight. Is that right? Okay.
Noon to 9.
And Sunday through Saturday, so full
Yes.
week. Okay. All right. Is that consistent with the front?
No.
No. Okay, so we're confirming what was on the hearing notice, so that's the hours that we'll go with, right? My colleagues are good with that? Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. All right, let me ask if there's questions. Mr. Kratman, you have any questions?
I do. So you mentioned that this is going to be for one day, but, you know, are you going to have events during the year where you may have, like I said, another accordion come in for like a celebration or something, or like if there's like I can't imagine, but just if there's like an Italian festival day or something like that, or something small?
We'd love to do
They'd be
that.
doing something like that to have other days, or is it just once a year?
At this time, we were looking for the one-time event, but we'd love to do something, you know, a little bit more through the year if possible, but not on an every weekend basis, no. At my age, I don't want to be doing stuff on every weekend. I have 5 children too, so they take up my weekends pretty
No,
much.
I'm just looking at your license, because one of the things you can do is you can ask for this license for year-round, where you'd have the ability to do a year-round, or you could come back in front of this board if you were looking for having special events, but then you would have to come back in front of this board and present it. So it's just, if you're doing something you need advance notice, the same thing that you just did, you'd have to give notice to the public, you'd have to send the public notice again, and you'd have to come back in. And so if you're going to do it multiple times, or you could come and you could ask, you know, if you're looking for something like that year-round. It's up to you, you know.
I would love to have that ability to do so. I think it would be very beneficial for the town, and pretty much as you see, our logo is a smiley face, and our goal is just to keep everybody happy, you know, and I think music and good time and having a cappuccino, espresso is pretty much does it all. So yes, that answer is yes, I would like to.
Well, I'm just going to get the gist of what the request actually is. Is it a year-round thing, or is it something that you're looking for once a year? So,
I like to do a year-round thing, if that's possible.
okay. And so the disc jockey part is, you're not going to have a disc jockey there at all? So that can be kind of struck in from what you're doing. And the live band, you're not talking about like something that's amplified, like drums and like a rock band or anything. You're talking about somebody with an accordion. and
Unless
some-
Metallica calls me personally.
No, I just want to get,
Maybe we
when someone
could have
sees
another
live
meeting.
bands, I'm just trying to figure out what you're looking for.
So
Because some
pretty much-
places have amplified, where then we have to have somebody come in and look at the decibels or whatever that is. It doesn't look like you're looking for something that's
No,
amplified.
not at all.
So you're looking for live entertainment that isn't amplified.
Accordion.
Okay.
Stuff.
And live music, acoustic, I think that, radio, television. Okay, no, my answers.
Thank you, Mr.
very much.
Carpenter. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I guess just a comment I just want to welcome you again to Tewksbury.
Thank you.
I know you've been killing yourselves. It looks wonderful.
Thank you.
So I wish you a ton of success. And I think this is pretty neat.
Thank you.
So just thank you very much, and again, welcome to the town.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, good comment. Mr. Mackey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to echo Mr. Kelly's comments. Heard you guys had a very successful soft opening.
Yes.
Haven't had a chance to get down there, but it's in the cards.
Awesome.
My question was mostly touched on by Mr. Kratman. It looks like there was a little confusion about kind of the one day versus the ongoing. I think we're on the right track. My question, Mr. Chairman, through you to the town manager, is what do we need to do to rectify this? Because on the request, it talks about comedy plan for the future, all the kind of everything for the one day and ongoing. I think if we can do the outside unamplified with the remainder of this request, we're probably in a good spot. But is there anything we need to do differently to?
We need to be very specific
Yeah.
with whatever motion is made.
Right, so whatever, the board should make make a motion for the one day, what it entails, make a motion going forward, what it entails.
That's drafted from this hearing notice, so that the motion is what's going to control, and that
Yeah.
entertainment license draft would have to be
Amended. That was where my question came from, because there was a disparity between the three.
Correct.
So how do we rectify that to make sure you guys are good to
So
go?
whatever
Thank you.
votes are taken here need to be very clear, and not
Check.
where there's some ambiguity here. So,
Perfect.
is that
Thank
your
you.
only question?
That's my only question. Thank you.
Ms. Wallner?
Thank you.
Really briefly, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, welcome. I'm
you.
glad to see you. I know you guys have been, I live nearby, so I've seen you guys been working really hard for a
Yes.
while now, and I've been in to talk to you, and I have been in, I came in on Monday. Absolutely, just a stunning operation,
Thank
so.
you.
And the raspberry bars are on point, not gonna lie.
Thank you.
That was really good. So, I know that there's a lot kind of going on, and we're going to do, it sounds like, one entertainment license for your grand opening,
Yes.
and then an ongoing entertainment license for the year, sounds like, with lots of stipulations and so forth. Because for me, I'm not in favor of an outside amplified noise beyond your existing radio system that I think is great when you're sitting outside on the patio, but like a live band outside with amplified sound, I wouldn't be in favor of. An acoustic guitar, somebody playing, the accordion as you've described. So it's really great. That's why I love when we get to come have these conversations. I think it's fantastic. When you're indoors, would you have amplified sound inside? Do you
No,
think? I mean, like, would you have a live band, or would you have somebody with an amp playing something
So
indoors?
One of our cousins, family members, is actually one of our baker's uncle, which is his name of Enzo. He sings a lot of Tony Bennett, a lot of Frank Sinatra, and I'm not sure, it sounds like you might know him. So it's not like an amplified with a band with like a guitar winding through it or anything. It's not, I don't call it as offensive as something like that might be screeching through the air at late hours of the night. So to play it inside, I think would be more, unless it was raining, it would probably be too overwhelming for someone to sing because it's not that large of an area.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay. All right, that's something I just wanted to clear up. Okay, I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, so it's a public hearing, so let me next ask if there's anyone in the audience here who wishes to speak on this particular matter.
Motion to close the
So
public
we have
hearing.
a quiet crowd tonight. Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Is there a second to Mr.
Second.
Kelly's motion? All right, so a motion to close the public hearing has been offered by Mr. Kelly, seconded by Mr. Mackey. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the chair will vote in the affirmative as well. So the public hearing is now closed, and that will bring us to the board's deliberations. So let me,
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to make a motion on the entertainment license. I'd like to make a motion to approve the entertainment license from between the hours of 6, on Sunday and Saturday, 6 a.m. to 12 a.m., indoors, outdoors, 12 p.m. to 9 p.m., for radio and television amplified system, live music and acoustic recorded, live bands, strike the disc jockey, and approval of dancing by patrons. And that would take effect on March 7, 2023.
okay, I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, would you
Yep.
repeat that?
Sure, it's radio and television,
Yeah,
amplification system,
yeah,
live music, acoustic and recorded, live bands, and dancing by patrons. And it would strike the disc jockey as, that he said he's no longer going to ask for.
And you said Sunday to Saturday, and it was 6 AM to 12 AM?
On indoors, 6 AM to 12 AM indoors.
Yeah.
And outdoors, 12 PM to 9 PM.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion on the table. Is there a second or further discussion?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kelly. So we have a motion before us offered by Mr. Kratman, seconded by Mr. Kelly. I'm not going to try to repeat it, but we will be very clear when it's typed up to reflect exactly what you said. All those in favor of the
A
motion as...
point of information.
Yes.
I'm reading the legal notice, which I think Mr. Kratman was referring to. But did you also say use of amplification system, which is on the front? Because I thought I heard
What
you
was the
say that
question?
too. I think you read the items out of the hearing notice,
Yep.
and I also thought I heard you say use of amplification system, which is on the front, but it's not in the hearing notice. And I just wanted to make sure, is that included in your motion or not included in your motion?
I had it in my motion, but I don't know if you said you were going to be using, I don't believe you said you were going to be using
Right.
To be honest with you, I'm not sure when you say amplification that's kind of broad to me, because amplification could be a concert at the garden as to a small amplifier for a wedding singer type.
So so before I continue, I got one last question. I know we're in minutes into making a motion, but
You
is
make
it?
my job really hard now.
I know.
Doing a great job, doing a great
I'm
job.
just trying to get the correct answers of what they're looking for. So when you're talking about amplification, you're talking about for indoors?
Yes.
Okay. So the amplification would be indoors and not outdoors. So that would, I think,
I would-
make the residents happy. So I will amend that motion to make the amplification system indoors for the purposes of that.
Thank you, Mr. Kratman.
All right.
Second.
Mr. Kelly?
With the amendment. sure.
Thank you. You saved me a lot of work.
And just with all fairness, I mean, the application's super vague, so it's not on you. That's why we have to sort it out. So
Yes.
you're good.
Totally
Yeah.
understand, totally understand.
Yep. Okay, so before I call for a vote, because we have a motion and a second with the change that was just offered, my colleagues are all comfortable, they have full knowledge and understanding of what's on the table? Okay. All right, so that brings us to the point of a vote. Let me ask all those in favor of the motion as offered and seconded to please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so I will vote in the affirmative as well. So that, I believe, is a unanimous vote. Is that right? 5-0. Okay, so we're going to ask the town manager's office now to decipher all of that.
Yep, no problem.
And put that into a license form, and in the next few days, you can get that, okay?
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you and good luck.
I hope to see you there. It should be
luck.
great.
Mr.
Thank
Chairman,
you
do
again.
we need a special entertainment license for their grand opening? Or are they good with
I
this
think
one?
we included it in that vote.
With the live music, yeah, because the band, but it won't be him. But, okay, just before you walk out, I want to make sure you're
No,
right.
that's perfect, thank you.
Very good.
Good luck.
All the best. All the best.
Have a great day.
All right, so that brings us to a town appeal of a denial of the of a public shade tree discussion. And that is a hearing scheduled for 7:20. So let me ask our Public Works Director, Mr. Hardeman, to join us. And maybe, sir, you can give us some background and detail on this. Good evening.
Evening, Mr. Chair.
It looks like you had a hearing at the DPW on March 2nd, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so why don't you give us the debrief on this?
So in accordance with Chapter 87, Mass General Law, we posted a total of 21 trees for removal that we've deemed to be hazardous, with the exception of one that was a resident request, particularly the tree at Birchwood Road. Of those 21 trees that we had the hearing on, 17 of those trees were appealed by two separate parties. So with the procedure in Chapter 87, when that process happens and the trees are appealed for removal, it comes to the select board for final decision on that matter.
Okay. All right. And I take it you are now the tree warden? Or who is the tree warden?
He is for now.
Congratulations.
You guys are easy, huh?
No extra money for that, too. Wow.
Okay. All right, so, all right, I guess we're gonna have to handle these in 17 discussions. So I'm gonna ask you and the parties involved, when I give them an opportunity to speak, to please be direct and to the point, because we'll be here quite some time. Otherwise, why don't, do you have any general comments you want to offer in general, or do you want to speak to specific trees?
I think I can speak in general, you know, through the list to kind of speed things up. So with the list of 21 trees, the Parker Ave tree was not appealed. That's for a drain installation that we're going to be doing this spring to eliminate some road flooding. The trees on Pike Street, the oak trees, those, if you've driven on Pike Street, you can see they're trees that have a lot of scarring on them. Pike Street's a narrow road. Trying to get the plows up there is challenging. We're going to be resurfacing Pike Street this spring and summer. So we'd like to remove those trees to improve safety along Pike Street, to widen the road slightly. And all of those trees were appealed. There's a pine tree on Shawshene Street that it's a white pine. And kind of in general, white pines are the trees that we deal with the most throughout town. They grow really tall, but the wind affects them significantly, and then they, get damaged. The limbs drop or the tree itself falls. On February 3rd of this year, Patton Road was closed for probably 6 or 7 hours, dealing with a white pine that was about 36 inches in diameter, and it fell across the road. It was probably 25 feet off of the road, broke maybe 15 feet above ground, and came across the road because it was about a 100-foot tall tree. So the pine trees that are on this list are very tall, and now they're susceptible to wind damage because of that. So the 2 pine trees on Towanda Road were not appealed, and 1 pine tree, a 27-inch diameter tree across from, or at 1424 Whipple Road, was not appealed. But the rest of the pine trees were appealed.
Was the Shawshene Street tree appealed?
Yes, it was.
It was.
Yep.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, one quick thing. Do we have our consultant review?
Yes.
Can you
Yes,
want
we-
to speak to that?
So we have a hazard tree assessment done every year. And we have a certified arborist who goes around and looks at all the hazard trees in town and creates a list for us of those hazard trees. And that's what we go off of when we're planning our tree removals. And we are going to be removing trees in the next few weeks that are on that list. But in Chapter 87, if it is deemed an eminent hazard, it does not have to have a tree hearing. But these trees, because they are, I'll say healthy trees, but do show, signs of damage, they're not an imminent hazard, they have to go through the process to be removed. But they have been deemed as, moderate to, excuse me, let me grab the terminology, high or moderate hazards.
Okay.
Those trees.
Now, one question that I have for you, Mr. Hardeman, you described the trees on Pike Street as being very close to the road. You're trying to widen the road.
Right.
There's a fair number on Whipple Road here. Are they all literally on the curbside, or are they in deeper?
The ones that are deeper are trees that we're not going to touch, the white pines, but the ones that we have on the list are within a few feet of the edge of the road.
Okay.
I'd say at most, maybe 6 to 7 feet off the edge of the road.
Okay. All right. All right, do my colleagues have any questions of Mr. Hardeman?
Yeah.
Ms. Wellman?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, go
Yes,
ahead.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hardeman, I appreciate you being here this evening. I have a couple of quick questions for you. How many butters did you notify for this tree hearing?
So through Chapter 87, the notification is not done to abutters.
Okay,
The process is that we publish twice in the newspaper.
Okay.
A minimum of 7 days prior to the tree hearing. It has to be posted in 2 public places. And a posting is actually placed on the tree itself.
okay. So people saw that on the tree, you put it in a newspaper, was it on the website?
Yes, it was posted on the website, I believe. I can
Okay.
confirm that, though.
Okay,
Oh, I'm not done yet.
I'm sorry. Apologies.
For the trees on Pike Street, do they impact the shoulder of the road? Is there much of a shoulder on Pike Street at the present time?
Pike Street doesn't have much of a shoulder. There's steep slopes, there's stone walls
Yep,
and trees along the road.
yeah, I've driven it. We have a number of complaints from a particular resident in that area who's complaining about pedestrian safety, which is part of the reason I'm asking the question is, should you remove those trees, do you think that pedestrian safety would be improved along that corridor?
Yes, yes, it will provide more room along that.
Because there may be more access, okay, thank you. And is it true, when it comes to liability coverage, that if you have a tree that has been deemed high or moderate risk, and that public tree damages private property, that the town would be considered liable for the repair of that property?
Unfortunately, I can't speak to liability issues as far as
I can.
the townspeople liability.
The answer is most likely. Once we're notified of a hazard and we don't do anything about it, then
Yeah,
that's
that's
when
where the
we're liable.
liability comes, yeah, okay. Thank you very much, I appreciate that, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You want on the west side?
Yeah, I just have, so, Mr. Hardeman, thank you very much for going through this list. The Pike Street, I completely understand. I've driven that road many times. It's a winding, not great sight distance going around that section. And if, never mind just the tree fell, if just a limb fell off one of those trees, and somebody was traveling around with very limited sight distance, I could see where the hazard and the risk comes from. But in this list, is in the areas in the majority, are there other trees that are around this area, or is there any like areas where this is the only tree in that area? Or is it something that these are the ones closest to the roadway and the other ones are set back? You know,
Typically, these are the ones closest to the roadway.
Yeah.
So Towanda, for example, there are 2 white pines, and I know that that wasn't appealed, but as a good example, Towanda has 2 white pines, one of which we've deemed a hazard. The thing about white pines is they have a shallow root system, and when there's wind blowing on them, if they're in groups, they're stable. When you start to remove some and leave one, then they become unstable. So that's why Towanda has 2, one that's deemed a hazard, one that is going to be susceptible to becoming a hazard if it's not removed in unison with the other. So along Whipple Road, these are in groups, and that's why we're taking those as groups.
no, that's the question I was actually trying to lean to, is that this, you know, when we get to, they're beautiful during the summertime, beautiful in spring, and we love, we're trying to make this a tree city. We're trying to, promote growth and having trees in a community. That's one of the reasons we love this town. But when you get to public safety, we get to wintertime and you get snow and ice, and you put that additional weight on these trees during this wintertime, and it just, I love trees, but not at the sake of putting somebody's life at risk. And that's the consideration that I'm going to take into consideration while viewing these things. But the last question, is there an opportunity, if we are removing trees from some areas, is there a way to maybe to replace some with smaller trees to do some, do we have a system of, if we're removing like 5 or 6 trees from some area, is there a way that we can do some plantings to put something out there, and over the next 20 years they grow, and add some more trees to that area?
That's a great question. There definitely is.
Okay.
We do have a program, we work with National Grid. When they remove trees, they provide trees to us. And the way Chapter 87 is written is, the trees don't have to be replaced exactly where they are.
Yeah.
They can be located as far as 20 feet off the edge of the right-of-way, and it is still deemed a public shade tree and protected by Chapter 87. So if, for example, we're removing trees because they're starting to grow up through power lines, it doesn't make sense to plant another tree there that's going to, again, grow up through power lines, but it can be placed further back from the right-of-way, and have a chance to flourish and provide that same, beauty that the original.
Within our limits, we only have so many feet off the roadway. On most roads, I'm guessing we only have, some places we probably have 10 feet off the edge of roadway, but then there may be town land.
Right.
Where you're talking about where we have a field. I mean, we're not putting them on private property.
True, but Chapter 87 does extend 20 feet beyond the right-of-way.
Okay.
So as long as we get permission from a landowner,
Homeowner.
we can locate the tree on their property, and it's still protected under Chapter
But
87.
you would have to get permission prior to
Right,
putting it, okay.
right.
Okay. Oh, I thank you very much. I truly appreciate you doing this work, because I see in way too many communities where there's, I hear it all the time. There's a tree limb came down and killed a family. We had one a couple of years ago that was out on Route 125 where a family was out at the intersection and a tree dropped on top of them, just driving down the roadway and killed them. So, to take this into consideration, keeping the residents safe, I appreciate it. So thank you.
Mr. Mackey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I completely agree with all of the pines, and if the oaks weren't on Pike, which is already a hazard in and of itself, I would likely have more discussion around those oaks. But I understand, and I think we all understand that Pike is a challenge in and of itself. So I have no challenges. I will add the comment that I live in the neighborhood of the two Towanda ones, and when I saw this, I went and took a walk and took a look at them. And after actually pausing and looking at it and seeing that one is kind of pitched over, I can fully understand why at least those two need to go. So thank you for the work on this.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me ask, we had some appeals here, so I believe we have people here who may want to speak to those issues. So ma'am, I'll invite you, you can either go to that mic, or if you want to sit here next to Mr. Harding, that's fine.
Thank you.
And let me welcome you, and when you get settled, if you wouldn't mind, just introduce yourself, name and address, so that we can capture that.
Sure. Susan Young, 1408 Whipple Road.
Okay.
And so the questions that I have about the trees that are coming down, so one of them is in front of my house. And I went to the public hearing last week and was told that, well, it was one of the trees that was dropping a lot of limbs. Having lived with that tree for 22 years, it really hasn't. It's not a tree that I would say is something that is dropping any more limbs than a tree in anywhere else. There are 3 trees that are on that list that are right around my home. So one is right across the street, right across Champion, the one in front of my home, and then directly across the street at, I don't know their number. It might be 1408, it might be the next one down. But 1409, I mean. But if, so what we were given as a reason for taking down the trees at the hearing was that the trees, in addition to dropping a lot of branches, is also that this whole thing that you were talking about with the wind and potentially bringing down. So when you start taking down more trees and more trees and more trees, I'm really curious about where it ends. Because if you take down these 3 trees that effectively actually form a nice little triangle, then are you saying, okay, the next trees down are then therefore going to be subjected to wind shear and other issues, and then, oh, next year, those other trees come down. I understand about white pines. We, had there are white pines all over Tewksbury. So my question is, when, like, do you have a height cap that you say this tree cannot grow any further than this amount? Do we always have to have trees that are planted in bunches? Because then you have more of a potential for one tree to go down and then another tree to pull it down. So I'm not really sure about this, the whole process and the understanding around the process about what, why did your consultant come around and say that tree at 1408, which has stood on its own for like 15 years, now needs to come down, along with that tree and then the other tree. So, I mean, I can speak to, specifically the ones that are right around me, but then just looking down the road, so you take down the next one, and then you take down the next one, and then that just kind of opens up everything to more of the same argument. And as you said, Mr. Kratman, we have a lot of pines here, and we are trying to be a tree city. And if we go around and start removing all of the white pines, then, where is it going to end? We put in smaller trees, it takes a longer time for anything to grow. Do we only plant one tree there, or do we have to plant a bunch of them? Is it only the white pines that you want to have in groupings?
Okay.
I am new to this process.
So, yep,
So
and
I'm trying to
that's
figure out
appreciated.
what
Yep.
is the rationale,
So
the
I'm
full
going to ask
rationale.
Mr. Hardeman to clarify a little
Yes,
bit.
thank
But
you.
before I ask him to do that, I want to ask you one question. Because
Yeah.
it looks like you appealed many of these trees. So my question is it more in line with what you just described of a general understanding of the philosophy that's behind it? Or do you have a specific issue with a specific tree, like each one of them, that I'm going to need to hear from you? Or is this more of a general concern?
It is more of a general
Okay.
question about all of those trees, because a lot of them stand
Yeah.
as single trees.
Got it. Okay, all right. So, Mr. Hardeman, can you elaborate? We have an arborist who works with the town, so can you speak to the rationale that goes into, why are we looking at these trees and a little
Certainly.
deeper than what maybe you described earlier?
So when we look at, trees to be removed, there's a few factors that come into play. The first is, what is our budget to take care of the hazard trees? How many trees can we get to? There's dozens of trees that are on the list that are hazards and should be removed. So there's a budgetary constraint throughout the year with that. The other is, white pines do not make good public shade trees along the right-of-way, right? With a shallow root system, if you plant next to the road, excuse me, you've got a road structure, with the surface and the subsurface stone and gravel and everything that impede the roots from growing basically to one whole side of the tree, and that they have to use the other side for their support system. Another thing is, the number of times we go out for tree calls and tree removals and trees on branches and trees on power lines and things like that are white pine related. White pines are the dominant tree that we have to deal with in town on a regular basis, because we're dealing with the trees along the roadside. We're not dealing with trees typically, off the roadside that are in large groves that are protected. So you've got these trees that, grow very tall. And if you've seen a white pine, it's very tall, not many limbs left until you get really way up to the top where it's going to be in the wind to catch the wind shear and cause problems. So, there are several factors in how we go about this. And again, to talk about, if we trim one of a pair of trees, it leaves that other white pine vulnerable. So we'd like to, eliminate that one as well. I had many conversations with the prior Public Works Director about street trees and things. And things that we talked about was, if we could eliminate pines along the roadside, and put other trees there, we'd do that in a heartbeat. You know, because they just are, they're very difficult to predict when you're looking at them, you know, what's going to happen. You know, the example I use is the tree that on February 3rd, 20 feet off the road, snapped in half and closed Patton Road, you know, and landed on some utility lines and things like that.
So one question I want to ask you to clarify is, you're looking at trees that are on the public roadway, along the roadway. How far back are you looking? And it goes to the question that was posed about what's next, right? If we take these trees out, are we going deeper next time? Or
Right.
Explain that.
So, you know, obviously, we don't want to remove trees and create an additional problem. But if we do have a hazard tree along the roadway, that, you know, that's the imminent risk that we, you know, want to abate. You know, because it will affect the motoring public. You know, a lot of people drive Whipple Road. If we can eliminate any risks there, that's our goal. You know, my goal is not to deforest Tewksbury by all means. You know, I think it's a beautiful
Thing is
place.
a tree would.
Yeah. You know, I live in a neighboring community that is a tree city, and I love it. And, you know, I think it will be a benefit if we can achieve that status. You know, but I do want to just eliminate risks when they present themselves.
To do that. Mr. Mackey, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I was just taking a look at the, kind of some of these trees, especially around the ones around your home that you were mentioning. And Mr. Hardiman, it looks like, I don't know, 10 feet away, there is a oak from the 1409 pine that is not on the list. So it's, there is, that shows that there is some thought. It's not a clear cutting of anything along the road. It's the white pines. There is an oak that is the same distance from the road, that is right down the street, doesn't need that support structure. So that to me shows that there is some thought. It's not a clear cutting of everything down the road. So I appreciate that.
Okay. Do you have any other questions, concerns?
No other
Okay.
questions, but
Okay.
I guess I would just like to, if, you know, we definitely, if I can't speak to the other trees, I would like to speak to at least the one that's in front of my house, because there are 2 oak trees in my front yard, which are right next to, you know, they're all in line with the white pine.
Right.
So shouldn't that help to mitigate any kind of wind that you're saying is coming at the tree? Or is it because you're removing 3 trees in one direction and 2, at least 1 tree in the other direction, that now my white pine is at risk?
Your white pine or the oaks?
My white pine, you can't touch my oaks.
But I don't intend to.
Not up for discussion.
Okay.
So I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, talking about the wind shear on a white pine, if I have my oaks there, then that's actually a grouping with the white pine.
Right.
Right.
Right,
So
and that does help
doesn't
to
that-
protect it. But again, you know, the white pines typically grow taller than the oaks, so they're higher up, they're catching more wind than the oaks. They're an evergreen, so the needles being on them year-round and the needles not, the leaves falling off the oak, it protects the oak because it's not acting like a sail and catching the wind, whereas the white pine is constantly in the wind throughout the year, you know. And as far as, you know, the trees that we have the ability to abate versus the ones we don't, we have the ability to abate the trees within the right-of-way, which we're trying to do, you know, and the white pine that would remain on your property, that's not something I can address, you know.
No, there are no other,
Okay.
pines.
Okay.
2 oaks and 1,
So,
okay.
so just to summarize, you're asking this board not to authorize 1408 pine tree to be removed, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, anyone else? Mr. Mancini?
Al Mancini, 15 Kenneth Lane. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it. I know Mr. Mackey loves to talk about trees, so here we are again. I think what Mrs. Young was talking about was the policy that was explained to us, which was primarily, if this tree comes down, we got to take this tree down because this tree is going to be affected by the wind now that we took the first tree down. So it kind of seems to me that I have trouble with that policy because it's like, again, before when I spoke, now safety obviously is the biggest thing. We don't need to have trees falling on anything, right? But we live in the suburbs, we live with trees. We all like living with trees because otherwise we'd live in the city. So the question I have is that, and Susan brought it up a little bit, which is to basically like, where does it stop? The policy is that if we take this tree down, it's going to be, the next one's going to be standing by itself, so we're going to take that tree down. And that's the thing. A couple of months ago, I spoke about taking healthy trees down and how I really don't like the idea of taking healthy trees down. If they're sick, that's a different story, right? But healthy trees, as I say, I mean, we've been working to try to make Tewksbury a tree city, and 21 trees is a lot of trees to me. It might not be to somebody else, but 21 trees is a lot of trees. When we looked at the list, I was like, whoa, 21 trees. Whereas before in the past, I've been for like 1 or 2 trees or 3 or 4. This is 21. There's a lot of trees here coming down. And I feel bad that I'm not an arborist, and I appreciate Mr. Hardeman's knowledge on white pines. I'm learning something every time I come into a meeting because it's pretty interesting to know more about trees. But I also feel bad that there's the 2 oaks that are mentioned have lots of scarring because, and I get it, I'm not a plow driver. I don't know how to drive a plow. You don't want me driving a plow, okay? But the idea is that the tree has been hit several times by plow drivers, causing scarring, which may or may not be making it dangerous. And I just feel really bad that you know, I don't know. I don't know who hit the tree, okay? But I do know that there's been quite a few mailboxes that have been taken out by plow drivers. So if mailboxes don't stand a chance, I mean, if trees don't stand a chance, then mailboxes don't. And that's just what I'm saying is it just seems like we're taking the trees down because the plow drivers are hitting them. I don't know. I mean, if it's that simple, then shame on me. But again, what we wanted was basically if we could get clarification or at least some kind of way on if we take this tree down, we got to take this tree down because this tree is going to be affected by that tree coming down. It's like dominoes is what it seems to me. You know, when I was teaching, my kids taught me how to play dominoes. And I still don't get it. And I think they like to play because they could kick my butt. But the idea is that the domino thing is where I'm really having trouble with this whole thing. You know, if I could get something a little bit more on that, I'd greatly appreciate it.
So, Mr. Hardeman, that practice or principle is, I assume, on the advice of the arborist? Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
And that would be, is that a common practice, a common view among consultants or arborists that we've used?
For the white pines, it is.
Yeah.
You know, there's safety in numbers.
Yeah.
You know, when you have a large grove of white pines, they protect each other.
So
But
I'm going to presume that this is like hard-learned experience, right? So, and we have to rely on the experts that we have.
But I got to ask is what it comes down to. You know, if I don't ask, then
Yep.
I'm not doing my due diligence to
appreciate
ask
that you
exactly
had
what it
asked.
is.
Yep.
And as I said,
Yep.
Dave, what was Dave's last name?
Lizotte.
Dave Lizotte, nice guy. The meeting, we kind of put him on a hot spot because I don't think he knew he was running the meeting, and we were asking him a lot of questions, and he handled it pretty well. The thing is that, you know, the idea of calling white pines widowmakers, you know, I guess that makes sense. But again, I'm wondering if it's not necessary, if it could happen type thing. I just don't know. I mean, because you can't come back. once you cut a tree down, you can't come back. And I get it, it's a tree, but I like trees, so that's why I'm here.
All right, let me thank you for your time.
Sure.
And for your views on it. This board finds itself in the position of having to decide what to do, right? That's the way this process works. So we'll do what we can with it, and we'll see what we feel is in the best interest of the town, so.
Well, the good news is
Thank
in the past, you've proven that that's your best interest.
our best.
Yeah, exactly, and I appreciate that.
And,
That's why I'm here.
Yep, no worries, thank you.
Yep.
All right, let me ask, is there anyone else on this topic? Okay, so let me first take the low-hanging fruit, if you will, okay? Thank you. All right. So the motion was made by Mr. Kelly, seconded by Ms. Wellman. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, public hearing is closed unanimously. So back to low-hanging fruit, or the low branches, the low limbs here. We have the Parker Avenue tree. We have the two on Towanda Road, and we have 1424 Whipple Road that were not appealed. So I would just like to ask if there's a motion to authorize moving forward with the removal of those trees. There's no
So moved, Mr.
controversy.
Chairman.
Second.
Okay. So motion made by Mr. Kratman, seconded by Ms. Wellman. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I'll make that unanimous as well. So that brings us down to the 17. Is there any discussion that my colleagues want to offer?
I just have one discussion. I appreciate the residents coming and speaking to this because I like the fact that people are fighting to keep this a green community. But Mr. Hardeman, if we were to remove some of these trees that, as you mentioned, the other trees, you mentioned that some of them could be replaced. We have a resident that is concerned about trees being removed in front of their house. Can some of those trees be planted back, specifically working with that resident to be planted something in that area?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, that's the number one question I had. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Yes, Ms. Wellman.
Regarding the Birchwood Road tree, that was a resident request. What was the determination on that by the department?
So that was actually a tree that I was able to go out and look at with the previous director, who was a certified arborist as well.
Yep.
So the resident on Birchwood removed all of the trees on their property and left this one lone white pine, approximately 100 feet tall, listing towards the street, towards the
Because it was a
power
public
lines.
tree?
Because it was a public tree, because they could not remove it.
Right.
And then they've asked for it to be removed.
Okay.
And we've determined that it is, it is hazardous because
Yeah.
of it standing alone.
Yeah. As a comment, Mr. Chairman, I've seen multiple white pines fall on homes and destroy them pretty soundly in storms. So that's what's advising me. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, it's not often that I offer a motion as the chair, but I'm going to offer one motion here. I'm going to give credit to Mrs. Young, and because she took the time to be here, and she's speaking with some passion about a tree on her property, although it is the town roadway. I'm inclined to grant the appeal on number 1408 for the reasons that I just stated. And I'd offer a motion to remove that from the list of trees to be removed.
Second.
I'm sorry, can we have discussion on that? Just, is if we, my concern is it's been deemed hazardous by our arborists. I understand that, is there a way, if we do not remove that tree, that it can be trimmed to a portion of making it safe? I appreciate that, we want to keep a tree in front of your house, and I appreciate that, but a number of times I've had residents come to me asking us to take down trees, and we brought it to our town. The town said no. within 2 years, those trees fell and landed on their properties. And they brought it to our attention. So I know that the town has worked saying to try to save trees as much as possible. The fact that they've actually brought this to us makes me concerned that they really are dangerous, because they could go out of their way to save trees. You know, it's like we've had people begging for us to take down trees, and we've said no. So I agree with you. I'd love to save the tree, but I would also hate to find out that we saved the tree and the thing falls in a year from now. So is there a way of making that tree, if we save the tree, is there a way to maybe trim it or make it so, I don't want you to cut the tree in half and make it look like an ugly tree. It's a waste of time doing that. But is there something that can be done maybe to make it safer?
Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Kratman. That is a good question. We can trim the tree up. I can't guarantee that it is going to be beautiful looking, because just the nature of white pines, you know, the amount of trimming that we'd have to do to make it safe may not leave much. You know, and then you're putting all the, you know, if you trim the top or try to trim it down, you know, I've looked at these pines, there's not a whole lot of branches on the lower portion of the tree, they're all up at the top, and, you know, so if you're trying to get it down out of the wind, you're not left with much of a tree.
No, I appreciate that.
Mr. Chair, perhaps a happy medium. To Mr. Kratman's point, it was deemed, sometimes we have to go with the experts, but to Mrs. Young's point, you know, if we do take the tree down, can we have a happy medium? She has 2 oaks, we can have 3 oaks. What's better than 2 oaks is 3 oaks? I mean, can we make that happy medium, that we put an oak in place of, in lieu of taking down the white pine? Would that be a reasonable approach?
Definitely.
Ms. Young? Well, I know the public meeting is closed, but I think that's a happy medium. To Mr. Kratman's point, if we're sitting here, we're deeming it hazardous, I don't know how we can backtrack as a board, just me personally, backtrack as a board, but Ms. Young brings up some good points, so I think that's the happy medium.
Well, we have a motion on the floor. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just didn't
I might
want
vote against my own motion.
No, I just, like I said, I would, if it was in front of my house, I'd want to keep a tree also, but I also, my fear is, I don't want to be back here in front of a year and find out that that tree fell. And the fact that it's on a list from an arborist saying it's a hazard makes me really concerned.
That's fair. All right. I don't want to ask you to speak, but can you just nod your head if the town were to put an oak tree up in its stead, would that be something that you're amenable to?
Can't happen.
It can't happen.
I have no room for another oak anywhere on that property. The sewer line that goes through.
Okay. All right. All right, so that's good for my colleagues to understand, and for the benefit of those watching on television who do not.
Mr. Chairman, can I offer a
There's a
thought?
sewer line involved.
What if you act on all the trees with the exception of that particular one until the next meeting? Give the Director of Public Works a chance to meet with the homeowner, look at the tree again, come back to the board at the next meeting with the final recommendation. It may still be take the tree down. It may be they came up with another solution to plant a different tree, but that particular tree, they can wait and come back at the next meeting.
That was my next suggestion. Thank you. You beat me to it. So, would that be acceptable to my colleagues if I amend my motion? We'll table 1408.
Yep.
Is there a second to my
Second.
motion? Okay, all right. So let me ask all those in favor to please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that will be unanimous. So we'll table 1408. And then I'm going to ask my colleagues if they have any motion on the remaining trees that have been listed that we have not already dispensed justice on.
Let's make a
Chairman,
motion.
I'll-
Oh, Mr. Kratman.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to agree with the our DPW's recommendation and remove the remaining trees on the list.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Kratman, seconded by Mr. Kelly. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And I'm going to support that motion, so that will be a 5-0 vote. All right. We'll close that effort, and I want to thank you both for your interest and your passion. And Mr. Hardeman, thank you for your excellent explanation and detail. It's pretty clear you've become quite the arborist.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask one more thing? When you come back to our next meeting, Could you come back with something talking about the replantings of where or how many you're talking about doing? That may be beneficial to the audience as well. We are taking down trees. I would like to know if we have some information of how many we're putting back up. So, okay, thank you.
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I want to ask if Mr. Montori would just briefly summarize, we've been asked by the Middlesex County Retirement System to...
Just, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I'll just maybe hit residents first in order.
Thank you. Any residents here who want to speak to any topic? No? Okay, all right, so we're going to move on.
Okay.
Oh, did you want to speak? Okay, I'm sorry, Mr., you're good.
Okay, all right. So, Mr. Montori, the Middlesex County Retirement Board has asked us to approve a one-time cost of living adjustment for retirees.
Correct.
And they're asking us to, I believe it's support a home rule petition or legislation.
So the board has received correspondence from the Middlesex County Retirement Board requesting select boards in all the municipalities that are part of Middlesex Retirement System to accept Chapter 269 of the Acts of 2022, which is a local option that allows a one-time increase to the cost of living adjustment granted to retirees in FY23 from 3% to 5% of the system's $16,000 COLA base. The Act works basically in two steps. First, the Middlesex Retirement needs to vote to accept the Act, and then secondly, 2/3 of the municipalities in the system need to approve the Act or accept the Act in order for the retirees in the system to get, instead of to increase their COLA from 3% to 5%, but only on that $16,000. It's not in their whole benefit. And the cost of that impact to the municipalities is approximately 1% of their valuation, which to the town of Tewksbury would be approximately $125,000, which would take effect in FY26. So it's a couple of years out. The basis for that recommendation and request from Middlesex Retirement was based on what the COLA has been granted to Social Security recipients in FY22 and FY23. In FY22, Social Security recipients received a 5.9% COLA on their full benefit, and in FY23, 8.7% on their full benefit. And it's important to note those who receive a pension from the town of Tewksbury and municipal pensions and state pensions in general, and I believe federal pensions, they do not receive Social Security. They do not pay into Social Security, therefore they do not get a Social Security benefit in addition to their pension. Now, there are some cases where if you worked in the private sector and received credit for Social Security, you could receive a Social Security benefit, but it's reduced by 2/3 of the amount of what your pension is. So depending on what your pension is, 2/3 of that would impact your Social Security. And in some cases, if you receive a high enough pension, 2/3 of that could wipe out your entire Social Security amount. So there was some thought that went into this based on what the benefit has been given to Social Security recipients, and that since the COLA for retirees are capped at 3%, this was a one-time increase of 2% for all of our retirees. And that's simply what the request is for FY23.
And the retirement board voted to accept the act previously, correct?
They did. They voted to accept the act on December 14th, 2022. Other municipalities are moving through the process to accept it as we speak. Those that have had it in front of them have accepted it. And equates to, with a 3% COLA increase on a $16,000 base is $480. This would increase it to $800 a year.
By chance, Mr. Montori, do you know how many of our Tewksbury retirees benefit from the system currently? Do you have a rough number?
I can look that up, how many retirees we have.
The chart says 335.
And
The
while
last
he's looking that
page.
up,
So you're saying 335?
Yeah,
Ms.
we're the
Wellman?
fourth largest member of,
Thank you, I appreciate that. Yep, okay.
Yeah.
That's good information.
yeah.
Okay.
Is that right, Mr.
Yeah, Mr.
Montori?
Chair, I just want to make a clarification, only because I'm one of those people. You mentioned that if you worked in the private sector and you were able to get Social Security, that there's a 2/3 offset. That 2/3 offset is only if you worked less than 30 years in the private sector. If you work 30 years in the private sector, you don't have an offset. So I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, it's anybody-
There's no
right.
offset, because there are some employees who work 2 full-time jobs who weren't.
Yeah, the impact took effect for those, it was an act that was passed, I think, in 1985, so people who were working prior to that would get it.
And passed it back in, you know.
Okay.
Right.
All right, so this is a unusual request. It's a one-time occurrence. It affects the town of Tewksbury by $125,000, benefits 335 retirees that came from the town of Tewksbury in summation, correct?
Yeah, I just want to look up how many,
Yeah.
if Selectman Wellman has a chart in front of her. then-
They're giving us, in the material they provided, Mr. Montori, they gave us a town-by-town listing. Are there further questions by my colleagues?
I guess just a comment, Mr. Montori did a very good job of explaining, because it's a little bit confusing for the state to push this down at a local level. But I think the point is, in lieu of not receiving a Social Security and receiving a pension, I would say the majority of the folks, the vast majority of the folks, I would put in the senior category with a pension. So for me, I think it's absolutely 100% equivocally a yay on this vote. So thank you for explaining it, Mr. Montori, because it is rather confusing, not only to me, but just to the average resident when this is put in front of us with these dollar signs. But if you kind of use that logic, it makes, I'm in favor of it. So thank you.
Okay. Any further comments? Ms. Wellman?
I just wanted to make a motion to adopt, accept Chapter 269 of the Acts of 2022 as requested by Middlesex County Retirement System.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion made by Ms. Wellman. Is there a second?
Second.
I'm sorry, thank you, Mr. Kelly. Second offered by Mr. Kelly. If there's no further discussion, I'd ask all those in favor to please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I will vote in the affirmative as well. That's 5-0. Okay, I believe the last item on our agenda tonight is just a short discussion about the retail marijuana regulations. We spoke at length about that, I think, the last meeting we had. And I think my colleagues are aware that a number of the number of the applicants, I should say, have proceeded to file for site plan review before the planning board, and they've had at least the beginning of hearings with the planning board. One of the things that came up in that process that seemed to make sense that we consider revisiting was concern about the validity of the approval by the select board when and if applicants get to us. The regulations as we currently have them allow for the approval to be valid for 6 months, and it appears that the process through the Cannabis Control Commission, at least at the present time, appears to be taking longer than 6 months, which creates a practical problem in the process. So we asked Mr. Sadwick and Mr. Montori to look at section 37.1 subsection D, which speaks to that. And in the packet this evening, you have a draft of edited language that would extend or create the 6-month approval would be from the date of approval by the Cannabis Control Commission as opposed to by this board's approval. And then it further would allow this board to extend at its election the approval for a good cause, and that would be done on a case-by-case basis. So I think we're trying to be cognizant of the reality of the timeline involved at the Cannabis Control Commission. And it would appear that Mr. Sadwick and Mr. Montori have given us a pathway to do that, if this board chooses to adopt the proposed language. So let me ask if there's any questions or need for further clarity around that.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Wellman?
I want to thank the planning board for sussing this out during their meeting. I think it's a practical edit to our policy, and I support it. Thank you.
Okay. So if there's no discussion, let me ask if there's a motion to adopt the language as proposed.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Okay, motion is offered by Mr. Kratman, seconded by Ms. Wellman. Again, that would amend section 37.1, subsection D, as previously stated. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair will vote aye as well, so we'll make that a unanimous vote this evening. Thank you for your patience on that. All right, I think we've covered off on everything on our agenda. If anyone feels I missed anything, please speak up. I think we've got it all. The next meeting of this board is scheduled for March 21st, 2023. And at this time, it's now about 8:28. I'd ask if there's a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
So we have a motion offered by Mr. Mackey, seconded by Ms. Wellman. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We now are adjourned. Thank you and good